Everybody see my screen, the Trino Meetup screen? Yes. Cool. Thank you. All good. All right, got 18. All right. Okay. All right. I think we're at a good time. We got again, a good quorum of folks coming in. We got about 19 here now. Hopefully more will be filing in as we get things going. So welcome to the EMEA and APAC. We had to put these ones over just due to time restrictions for Martin. As he kind of mentioned, we are having some of our Pacific side folks of the Northwest joining us today, and so we need to we basically needed to try to kind of overlap this so that everybody could join to do the talk today. So thank you very much for coming today, and really excited that we're getting these things started, these meetups. This is going to be the initial of many monthly meetups that are going to be coming up down the pipeline. Next month already, we can talk about. We just confirmed with Iceberg creator Ryan Blue that to come on for a talk with us in May. So we're looking forward to that. And basically going to be starting these moving forward a lot more frequently. Based on what we did do a survey, kind of based on what people were saying, we should be doing this at a monthly rate. A couple folks that were interested in doing this at a little, every 2 weeks. A couple folks that were more interested in doing this every 2 months, but the primary majority were saying 1 month. So I think that that's going to be a cadence that we can kind of keep up with pretty easily, and we're going to be kind of moving these to virtual. And I'll talk a little bit more about that moving forward. These are hosted by Starburst, so we will be hearing a little bit from Starburst as well today. Here's some of the social that you need to know if you want to find, if you are just jumping in and finding out about Trino. We're going to be talking, giving a little bit of a background into that as well. And then, jumping in with one of the creators, Martin Traverso, to really dive into the specifics, and then doing an AMA with the whole initial Presto creation team. Give us a star on our repo if you haven't already. It's at GitHub, and then it's TrinoDB /Trino repo. And that will definitely give us a little more visibility on GitHub. So agenda today, I'm going to go over everybody who's going to be talking today. We're going to have a quick sponsor message. I'm going to go into a small bit of Trino overview for those that don't need to get caught up to speed about what Trino is. And then we're going to do a couple announcements, and then jump right into the main content, which is talking with Martin, getting into the state of Trino. And then obviously doing a bit of an AMA for everyone. Feel free to post questions as we're going through this, as you're thinking of them, and we'll try to surface them as we can. And some of them we may couch towards the end, towards the AMA session. But definitely bring those up as you think of them. So first, let's introduce all the speakers today. You probably know the folks on the top, maybe a little less Eric. So this is the team that initially put together the Presto back at Facebook back in 2012. It's Martin Traverso. He's joining us today to do the state of Trino. And then Dane and David and Eric will be joining us a little bit later during the AMA session. And then you may know Manfred as well as myself from the Trino community broadcast. I have our little banner back here. We do these every bi-weekly, and so we basically every 2 weeks we'll come out with little new like usually they're talking about like a specific connector or some specific area of Trino that we've been looking at lately, and bring on some guests and talk about just nerdy stuff about the Trino query engine and all the connectors that surround it. And then finally, we have Vishal here. He's going to be talking to us a little bit about a new product that we have from Starburst, and basically getting us understanding what Starburst does. And they're our sponsors today, so really thankful to have him here to talk about this. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this over to Vishal. And Vishal, are you there? Do you want to do a quick overview on Starburst Galaxy?
Definitely. Thank you, Brian. Let me share my screen, so give me a second.
Yeah, I'm going to stop sharing, and then you can go ahead and feel free to ask questions again on any of this stuff, including this the sponsor message.
Yep. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yep, we can see it.
Awesome. So thank you, Brian, for having me here on this meetup. I'm actually really excited to talk about Galaxy. It has been a making in a long time. And the main objective of talking around Galaxy is what Galaxy is trying to do, like how we can provide the power of Trino within minutes. And that's what I'm here to talk about. Before even I talk about Galaxy, I want to talk a little bit about Starburst. So let me start at the beginning, like our founders, what they saw when they were at Facebook, like including Martin or our founders, Justin at Teradata. They believe that most organizations have massive amount of data sitting in all these formats, the data lakes, warehouses, and everyone is looking to put the data in a common format. And that requires you to move it and copy and consolidate into an on-prem or a cloud. And that is extremely time consuming. It's laborious, and it adds zero value and increases security risk with multiple copies. So ultimately what it drives down is to providing insight at the speed of business. And 80% of enterprise spent on this ETL process, while 20% is only spent on getting business value out of the data. And that led to I believe, the initial vision around Trino, and also what formed the Starburst, which was from 3 years ago. So what Starburst is trying to do is provide the power of Trino using a single point of access. While serving our customers, Starburst also believes giving back to the community, and this is why Starburst is also the biggest contributor to Trino community. Not only what we learn from the customer, how they're actually experiencing day-to-day problem and how we are solving it, we learn those problems and try to give back to the community so that people are going into the no ETL process and getting access to their data. Today, Starburst has two different offerings. One is the manual offering, where one can actually go on a command line and run Trino. But also we have self-managed automated offering, where one can use leverage the power of Kubernetes to automatically manage the infrastructure while the load in the workload happening day by day. Initial setup takes time because it comes with the knowing and being technical and knowing Kubernetes. An administrator needs to be technical to get the Starburst up and running. But I mean, this is a code I read online, and being a non-technical person, I'll say it. For me, when we talk about Kubernetes, I mean, at some point, like I don't know what exactly Kubernetes does, and it actually needs advanced skills to get things up and running. But what if I told you you can get the power of Trino without being a Kubernetes expert? And that's what led the birth of Galaxy. Galaxy is a fully managed built-in security offering we are building. So right now with the Galaxy, we are planning to help team of all sizes, team of all technical abilities to get the power of Trino without having to worry all the technical aspects around it. Some few key benefits around Galaxy is completely fully managed. So just eliminate the administrative overhead and infrastructure build out around with the automated provisioning and configuration and updates and patching. We centrally manage all the security, data privacy, and data protection, and auditing to comply with the regulation. And one does not have to worry about it with Galaxy because being a fully managed solution, you leave this to the experts around what needs to be done around the security and administrative process, while one can completely focus on how to query their data sources no matter where it exists. With Galaxy, as your workload increases or decreases, you'll have a seamless scalability, while as your workload goes down, the auto scaling will kick in to make sure you're not spending a lot of money, bringing to the cost transparency where you only pay for what you use and you get full exposure into what you're using day by day. This is a quick overview into the architecture of Galaxy. As one can see, that Galaxy has three main components. One is the control plane, provides everything a user needs access to manage one's environment from a single point of access. And then there's a data plane where the clusters of Trino is running completely in your organization, in the customer's organization, because we believe customer owns the data and it should never leave the customer's environment, while control plane allows our customers to access and run and manage all their data from single point of access. And last but not least, we have built a beautiful UI for Galaxy. And I want to call out Ali here for all the effort which has gone through building this UI. And Ali may be known in this community also because she was the reason behind the Commander Bun Bun Trino's logo. So Ali has done tremendous effort talking within the community, talking to our customers, making sure that one get to enjoy the full power of Trino while actually having a great user experience while doing so. So we want to make this experience seamless and enjoyable while people are concentrated on getting the full power of Trino while getting access to your data. And the reason why I'm here, because Galaxy is going live in May. We are going GA. It's a great and exciting moment for me, but at the same time, we are in the free trial. We'll have a free trial. We are also accepting folks who can sign up for Galaxy today and get to use Galaxy before it goes GA and enjoy and give us feedback into how they will see the Galaxy to evolve in the future and how the Galaxy can solve your problem. And as I said, you do not have to be Kubernetes expert. You do not have to be infrastructure expert to know and to get the Galaxy up and running. Within minutes, one can actually query their data sources and one can actually start writing queries, whether in Galaxy or outside the Galaxy using your favorite BI tool. Please let me know if there are any questions. But again, the link to join Galaxy is at the bottom. Very simple. Join Galaxy on starburst.io.
So Vishal, there actually is one question that came up with this. Can we deploy Starburst Galaxy in AWS and GCP?
Good question. Right now, the Galaxy is deployable in AWS. Our vision is to go GCP and other cloud as we move forward. But at the moment, Galaxy can be deployed in AWS.
Cool. And let us know any other questions. Vishal, just if you want to, just hang around during the session, and then kind of watch the chat, and Vishal can answer any questions that you have about Galaxy. And thank you very much for going over that and sponsoring this meetup. And so I will take back the share screen.
Thank you, Brian.
No problem. Okay, cool. All right, so getting back to things now, I wanted to take a moment to just kind of talk about where we're doing with meetups moving forward. The whole idea behind these meetups is we wanted to take 3 meetups that span globally right now. We initially had a lot of meetup groups that were existing in North America. So if you do look in Trino on the meetups groups, you're going to find a lot that are kind of physical in-person meetups that we initially had invested in earlier. And I, obviously in the before times when COVID was not a thing. And so, we really hadn't used those too much. And what we wanted to do is make an initial virtual meetups that are going to be kind of split by time zone. So if you are in EMEA, kind of area, and you want to see anything that's coming up from all over the globe, whenever we eventually do get back into in-person meetups, what we want to do is we want to have a meetup space moving forward where we can actually either get recordings or get basically meetups that have happened before, and have a way to kind of bring that to everybody who maybe isn't close to a physical meetup. For now, obviously, though, this is our primary method of engaging and being out here in the community to bring on these awesome talks that we plan to bring up in the next couple months. So for right now, I'm pushing. I want all of you folks to kind of tell your friends about this, let them know about these virtual meetups, and that if they're not around anywhere where we have a physical and face-to-face meetup, even when we get back to post-COVID times, the goal is to actually keep these around and keep them as a vehicle to kind of include everybody who is not necessarily around one of these big cities. And so we have it split up into 3. We kind of have the Americas region, the EMEA region, and then the Asia Pacific region. And so depending on where your timestamp is, or if you don't, depending on what your schedule is, maybe you're a night owl and you like to be up really late at night, you may want to join one of these in particular. So just wanted to make a quick mention as to how we're structuring that. For those that haven't heard about Trino, I'm going to do a very quick overview of what it does. So Trino is a fast distributed SQL query engine that's designed to basically sit on top of large data sets. So we're talking kind of bigger data, terabyte, petabyte type of data. And we are trying to basically pull in data from different data sources, and be able to perform things like joins and aggregations over them. And the ultimate idea is that you can basically have something like, let's say, your data lake. So you have data sitting in Hive or S3, and you can join that data with maybe some data that's sitting inside of your MySQL database, or inside of, let's say, if you have an Elasticsearch cluster or a Mongo cluster or some sort of NoSQL database, you can actually perform joins across this data using Trino. And this obviously, you want to be able to actually take this data and visualize it. So a lot of our clients, we have Python clients, JDBC clients, Starburst has an ODBC client. There's not currently an open source version of that, but there's a lot of ways that you can basically plug in what Trino offers into a lot of the common data science and dashboard type tools that is used by either business analysts or data scientists. I think most people know that, so I'm not going to go too heavy into this and what all this means that are joining this. But I wanted to catch anybody who maybe is joining this just out of initial time trying to kind of understand what Trino does. So where we are on this whole spectrum of like database land in general is we are more focused in on analytics. So, there are some things that are more focused on transactional data, this being kind of OLTP and, focusing more on data integrity, whereas analytics is more focused on, reading over large sets of data. So that's the basic, like, and I call it TLDL, the too long didn't listen, when it comes to understanding what Trino does. Now, there's a lot of confusion out there in the community about, well, okay, I've heard about Trino. I've kind of heard about this thing called Presto, and some people that have been following kind of already know this. But to simply start this out, Trino was is a fork that came from the original project that was started by Martine, Dane, and David, as well as Eric here today. And what basically happened is they started this open source project at Facebook, grew into popularity over time that they were there, not only from the open source side, but also within Facebook. There was pressure that was put on to the team to basically automatically give committer rights and things like that to Facebook. So it was the decision of Martine, Dane, and David to basically move out, make a new community, and basically assume that the Presto branch was going to kind of go away. And it didn't go away, and so it's still kind of being led by other corporations, and they have a new foundation that they have sitting on top of it. But what they have kind of gone and continued doing, they now fall under the auspices of Linux Foundation. That still continues to be a project, but it is not the same project. And Trino is the one that is basically housing the original creators of Presto, and has a lot more of the growth. We have a lot of graphs that Martine will be showing you today in terms of how that growth is going on. So I'm not going to go too far into that. What I want to talk about is some of the community efforts that we have. If you haven't, please join our Slack channel. We also have the biweekly Trino community broadcast that I was talking about before. We obviously have these virtual meetups that we just mentioned. And then if you want to contribute to Trino, definitely check out the Trino IO development. All of these links, by the way, I will be sending out in an email afterwards, but and we will also have a recording coming out after this, if anybody's curious to know. And then we have some blogs, a blog page, as well as if you want to submit your own blog, if you have something really cool that you're doing with Trino, definitely let us know. And then as well, if you like to commit for documentation, if you're a docs type of person, we have a lot of stuff going on in our docs now, and we will be participating actually soon in the Write the Docs conference. Another great exciting announcement is we do have some cool Trino, yeah, that's right, show off your Trino shirt there, Manfred. We have different Trino Bunny t-shirts that are coming down the line. So we will be sending out a link that is up here on the slide right now to get your own Commander Bun Bun t-shirt. So that is free for you for showing up today. So thank you very much for joining us. And then also we would ask that when you do get it, definitely if you have a Twitter account or if you have LinkedIn or wherever, just go ahead and share a picture of your shirt whenever you get it. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to one of the authors of the book, Trino, the Definitive Guide, to talk about this update on a book that we've had out in the community for a while.
Yeah, so this is Trino, the Definitive Guide now. We wrote this, or finished writing it basically last year in April 2020. And it's pretty much the first book it is the first book that came out about what was then called Presto. Has a lot of additional material that includes things that are not necessarily in the documentation, is a bit friendlier, and is a great addition to the documentation that's obviously very much in detail, and an entry to now Trino. The book had free downloads available from Starburst last year, sponsored, and over 5,000 of you have taken advantage of that, and I think that's really great. And with the change to the project called Trino, we needed to update the book, and that's what I did. We changed to the latest release 354. We updated all the download links, all the commands, all the property names, and everything in the book basically to the latest and greatest information. And the book is now available again. It literally just came out of the press last week. And Starburst graciously is again sponsoring a digital copy for you. So we would love for you to get a copy from Starburst at the URL that's on the slide, and hopefully enjoy it. And if there's any questions or whatever, feel free to find me, Matt, and Martin on the Slack that Brian already mentioned, the community chat. So we're always there, and there's a support repository with more examples. And then, of course, on the Trino community broadcast, Brian and myself also have a repository with even more examples and even more things. So ultimately, with the book, the documentation, and all you can learn from the videos we have online from the Trino community broadcast and more, you can learn a lot about Trino. So hopefully you take advantage of that.
Sorry, I had to get off mute. Okay, so with that, that is all of our announcements in the community, and we are finally getting to bring on our honored guest, Martin. Would you want to take us away to talk about the state of Trino?
All right. Well, let me share my screen here. Let's see, can you guys see that?
Yep.
Okay. Cool. So we're going to talk about where we are in terms of the project growth, and we're gonna discuss some of the features that we've added over the past, say, year or so to Trino, and then briefly mention some of the things that are coming up in the next few months. So looks like Brian, you kind of took care of half of my slides, so I'm gonna go through some of these quickly. So Brian talked about what's Trino, what some of the history around the rename of the project. The only thing I wanted to highlight there is that Trino is the same as PrestaSQL. If you were using PrestaSQL, if you're involved in the PrestaSQL community, it's the same software, it's the same people, it's the same community around the project. It's just a new name, and of course a cute little bunny there. So you can get more details about the story behind the rename by following that link I have down there. And if you're running on an older version of PrestaSQL, there's a blog post that talks about what things you have to consider when upgrading to a new version. I mean, we know it's been a disruptive change, and that explains all the things you might want to look into and consider. There's something to be said about changing the name of a project. Like that bend in the curve happened right after we renamed, and it's become super popular. People have been reacting very positively to it. So this is a chart of the GitHub stars over time since around January. Since around January 2019, when the project split, and of course it has started growing much faster after the rename. So you want to be on that chart, so please give us a star by following that link.
I have to chime in here for a second. I love the BI tool you used, Martin. That's a great chart.
Oh, this is it's an open source. I think it's an open source tool. There's a website. You just plug in the repository location, and it just plots it for you. So it's pretty cool.
It's really nice.
Right. So in terms of what's been going on in terms of stats, the project has been growing very quickly. I mean, if you look at this is actually over the past 8 years and a half or so of since we created Presto, we've had more than 460 contributors to the project. This is only contributors to the code repository. It doesn't include everyone else that contributed to with blog posts, with other type of content, with helping users, other users on the Slack channels and so on. We have more than 4,000 members in Slack, and this is an increase from 800 when the project split back in 2019. So that's a huge growth. I mean, there's about 100, 200 people that join every month, and about 500 people are active every single week. So it's a very vibrant and an active community. If you're not on Slack, that's the place to be. That's where you're gonna get help from other people. You can ask questions. You can find out about potential opportunities for contributing and get help if you want to get into the code and other areas. We've done about 55 releases since the split, so that's about one every 2 weeks or so. We try to target releases every 1 or 2 weeks, so we're kind of meeting that average there. And then since the split, the project has added about 8,000 commits for a total of 23,000. And interestingly, if you look at what happened since the split, the project has accelerated. So the red line there is the activity in the Presto.db project over time. So you can see that after the split, the project, Trino project actually started growing much faster in terms of activity. There's more people involved, more activity going on. So it has been a huge thing for the project. And well, Trino is used all over the world. These are some of the companies that are using it today. You have you can see some big companies like Lyft and LinkedIn and Netflix, and there's other smaller companies and across different industries. This comes straight from the users page on the website. So if your company uses it and you want us to add you there, just drop us a note and we'll add you. All right, let's talk about the changes that we've added since roughly about a year or so. Let's start with let's get some of the boring things out of the way first. So we revamped security in Trino. There were a number of problems before where endpoints were not properly secured, the web UI wasn't secure. So we tightened that up. All those endpoints and interfaces are now properly authorized. You have to have authentication to be able to access them. And then along the way, we fixed this CVE that got reported, and this affects versions older than, I think it's 3.3.7 and any Presto.db version. So if you're running on any one of those versions and you're using security, then you're going to be affected by that issue. So we encourage you to upgrade to a newer version than that. And then we added support for OAuth authentication for the web UI, CLI, and JDBC driver, which makes it easier to integrate with third-party authentication flows. So it's actually a pretty powerful feature. It's there are still some improvements going on, but it should be useful if you are integrating with your own authentication provider. Let's talk about some of the fun features now. So there's a number of improvements in the language that we've added over the past year or so. So one of them is this idea of a window clause. This is a concept in the SQL specification. When you are using window functions, for example, in this case, you are doing an average, a sum, a max as window functions, it's very common that you want to use the same window specification across all those functions. Sometimes the window specification can be pretty complex. In this case, we're partitioning by customer key, ordering by within each partition by date, and then framing it based on a date interval. So if you have a number of window functions, you end up having to repeat that window clause everywhere. So it makes your queries more verbose, more brittle. If you make a change in one, you have to remember to make a change in all of them. So in SQL, there's a feature called window clause, which allows you to factor out that type of specification and reuse it. And you can actually reuse window specifications inside other definitions, so you can kind of compose them. So this is now available in Trino. It's actually a very, very cool feature. There's more details in a blog post that Kasia, the contributor that wrote this feature, wrote about. So you can check it out later. Next, we added so Trino and Presto used to support a window framing type for window functions called rows. This SQL specification talks about a couple other window framing mechanisms called range and groups, and we now support those. So those give you more flexibility in terms of how you define the frame of the set of rows that are going to be considered when evaluating the window function. And again, you can see more details in that blog post. It has a pretty cool explanation of how they work and how you might use them. One very important change that we made, this is, I think it was version 341 or so, we finally fixed the semantics of timestamps in Presto. There was a long-standing issue that dates back all the way from when we created Presto, where timestamps didn't behave as defined by the specification. So in SQL, timestamps represent, a way to think about them is like they represent like an extended date. It's a date with hour, minute, and second precision, if you will. And previously they were being considered as points in time. So they were affected by session time zone. There were a bunch of weirdness around how timestamps behave, especially when parsing them and generating timestamp values. So the most immediate or evident or thing that you can observe is that if you were trying to parse certain type of timestamps, previously they would fail because in this case, for example, if you try to parse this timestamp in Los Angeles time zone, this is actually a timestamp that falls in the daylight savings transition gap. So if you were trying to treat that as a timestamp with a point in time with time zones, this doesn't exist. So this would be a failure according to the old semantics. Now with the new semantics, this is a proper timestamp and it can be parsed and you can operate on it. So this is already fixed, and again, it simplifies how you think about timestamps and fixes the weird semantics that those types had. Related to this, we added support for variable precision temporal types. Trino, Presto and Trino since the beginning supported precision up to 3 decimals. That means you can have timestamps with milliseconds, timestamps with time zones, times with time zones with millisecond precision. And the SQL specification actually allows precisions up to, actually arbitrary precisions. It's up to implementation to decide how many. And this is a very important feature for some industries. Like for example, in the finance industry, where they deal with transactions and for example, in the stock exchange, they deal with very granular transactions. They need to get precision up to, or deal with precisions up to, say, nanoseconds. So with this feature now, it is possible to do that. In fact, like with Trino, you can have precision up to 12, which gives you picoseconds. Like probably not a very useful in practice thing, but it's there and it's supported. And so yeah, for example, you can see in this example where now you can declare a timestamp with 12 decimals and it will properly infer the type as a timestamp with 12 precision 12. Some of the built-in functions to get the current timestamps or timestamp with time zones, you can parameterize them with the precision you want and you'll get the correct value. So for example, here you have local timestamp with precision 6, and you'll get the timestamp with 6 decimals. If you say current timestamp with precision 1, you'll get 1 decimal, it will do proper rounding, and so on. You get the same thing for time and time with time zone. So one of the important thing is that because we now support variable precision temporal types, it is easier to more faithfully integrate with third-party databases. Like for example, Oracle deals with timestamps with precision 6, which is microseconds. Previously, when you were if you tried to query data from Oracle through Trino, those timestamps would be truncated down to millisecond precision, which is some form of data loss. So with this feature now, we can expose the types more faithfully and avoid that type of loss. We made a number of improvements to support for correlated queries. There's an interesting twist here, which is that you can now have a correlated query that is correlated on the field on a field from the outer column by itself. Like there's no table involved in this nested subquery. So in this case, just to walk you through an example, where we have a table with 2 arrays. It's a single array column with and 2 rows. So we're getting we're selecting from that table, and then for each row, we are processing the array by doing this unnest through this subquery. So we're saying unnest that array. So in the first row, it will be unnest the array that contains 1, 1, and 2, and then compute the maximum of all the values in that array minus the average in that array. So this is kind of a synthetic example, but it gives you an idea what you can do. Here we're computing the delta between the maximum value and the average from all the elements in each array. And then if it's greater than 1, then we output the row. So this executes row by row, and it gives you more power to operate on array data. There's a number of other improvements that we made to correlated queries, more types of correlated queries that are supported. I'm not going to go over them here, but just be aware. All right, we added another big change, which is support for updates in the language. So previously you could select from tables, you could insert into tables. Now you can update rows in tables. This, of course, requires cooperation from connectors. So connectors have to implement this feature. There's a set of APIs. Currently, we support that feature in the hide connector when you're dealing with transactional tables. So, and there are some, I mean, there's some work that's going on to add this feature to other connectors like the Iceberg connector once that part of the Iceberg specification is finalized. There have been a number of performance improvements. These are some of the most notable ones, but be aware there's changes, like small changes everywhere that all contribute to better performance. One of the bigger ones is support for dynamic filtering and partition pruning. This allows Trino to take advantage of information defined dynamically out of when reading tables, and use that to filter, especially when you have joins, to be able to use that to filter data on the other side of the join and potentially pruning partitions, which can speed up query performance dramatically. There's a couple of blog posts there if you want to get down into the nitty-gritty of how that feature works. We have an optimized writer for Parquet. It's still experimental, but it's faster. There are some rough edges, so if you want to try it out, please do so. Provide feedback, report bugs, and the more people use it, the easier it will be to get it to a state where it's ready for production use. And then we've made a number of. This has been a kind of a long process over the past couple of years of adding support for complex, pushing down complex operations into connectors. This allows connectors to, in some ways, participate in the optimization process, the query plan optimization process, and perform some operations in the backend system. For example, when you're talking to databases that have some sophisticated query language, you can push down some operations to the underlying data source. So it supports things like aggregation, join, order by, and limit, push down, and so on. And this can dramatically improve performance. For example, when reading data from remote databases, you don't have to transfer, the Trino doesn't have to transfer all the data for a given table. It can push down part of the computation. We have a bunch of new connectors. The couple notable ones are Iceberg and Pinot. Those are that are in very active development right now, and they are being used in production by a few companies. Like Iceberg is being used at Netflix and LinkedIn. They are the major contributors to that connector implementation. There's the Pinot connector, which is used by a couple other companies, and that's been very actively developed. There's a few features coming up, and then we have connectors for Druid, and recently we added a connector for ClickHouse. Last year we added Oracle and BigQuery, and there's even a connector for Prometheus. So if you're using Prometheus for gathering metrics from your systems, you can use Trino to query those metrics and get some more complex analytics and use the full power of SQL over those metrics. And then finally, there's an assortment of other changes. I'm listing some of them here. So we now support, if you're migrating from Hive and you have views defined in Hive, those views have use the Hive dialect. So they are not necessarily compatible with the SQL dialect from Trino. Now we have the ability to translate them on the fly to be able to query them directly. So so the feature is ready for use. There are also some rough edges. Some cases are not handled. So as you use that feature and you find bugs, please report them and they'll get addressed over time. We have support for org transactional tables. This allows you to do granular deletes and updates on a per row basis. So this is a very, very powerful feature, especially when combined with the delete and with the update feature that the engine now has. And then on the kind of more infrastructure side, we added support for registering multiple event listeners. So now it's possible to have I know you may have a listener that these are listeners that you deploy to in the Trino cluster that get notified when a query starts and a query completes, and you can get some details about query stats and the shape of the query and so on. Now you can have multiple listeners. I mean, you may be doing forwarding the events to some system, you may be aggregating in a different system. So now those can coexist. And we also support multiple password authenticators. This allows you to compose different authentication schemes, like if you're using LDAP and file-based password authentication, you can overlay them by having them at the same time. There are many, many, many more changes. We wrote a couple of blog posts at the end of 2019 and 2020 that go over all the changes that happened during those years. So I encourage you to go look at them. Many of the changes, of course, they are exclusive to Trino because they happen on the Trino code base over the past couple of years. All right, briefly, let's talk about some of the things that are coming up. This is just a sampling of some high-level projects based on. I mean, I went through GitHub and from knowing what people are working on. There are many, many other smaller projects people are working on, something that people are thinking of working on. This is just an idea of what's actually being developed and what's likely to land in the near future. So, I mean, here the arrow is kind of indicates like high level, like the level of completion of those features, and I try to place them where I best thought it was. They should go. So there's a new feature to the language, match recognize, that we're implementing that should land pretty soon. This is a feature that allows you to write queries that can do pattern matching over sequences of rows. And this is very, very powerful, especially when analyzing event data. For example, if you're the canonical example is you're looking at stock prices and you want to see when a stock price goes up and down and detect patterns. So you can use match recognize for that. Merge is another feature that it's in progress. It's very close to getting ready. And this is an extension of it's kind of a way to modify tables or insert and modify data in one single statement. You can do a delete, an update, and an insert in the same statement. It's a very powerful feature, and that's close to going in, and it will require support from connectors to be usable. And we're going to have support for the Hive connector and I think the Kudu connector to start with. There's a new set of APIs for connectors to implement that you want to participate in that feature. So I mentioned some of the Pinot improvements. We're adding support for creating tables, inserting data into Pinot, pushing down aggregations into Pinot. So that's about to get into. There's also a vertical connector that is in progress. I think that's under review. So hopefully should be able to land quickly. We are making a number of improvements, performance improvements, in particular around Parquet. One of the features in the latest versions of Parquet is this thing called column indexes, which allows the engine to prune and avoid and skip reading data that's not going to be relevant to the query very early on. And we're adding support for that in the Parquet reader, so hopefully that should improve I/O and CPU efficiency of queries that process Parquet data. This has been a long ongoing feature that we've been talking about for a while. We've been making small steps. The idea is we're adding support for resolving functions dynamically in the engine and connector APIs, and this opens up the door for a number of things in the future, like connector provided functions, function namespaces. So I'm pushing down functions, complex functions into connectors as part of predicate pushdown, function pushdown, and so on. So this is ongoing work, and we'll continue to see improvements and more capabilities around that area over time. There has been some initial work to support materialized views last year. So the engine supports there's a kind of a language constructs and being able to analyze materialized view queries, and there has been initial support in the Iceberg connector for that, and we're seeing some activity in around making that feature even better, extending it to other connectors. Things like, for example, being able to take advantage of materialized views to optimize queries that can leverage the materializations. And then finally, there's an effort to add a way for connectors to provide custom metrics. Right now, the metrics are limited and hard-coded, and different connectors may want to expose different things. For example, in the Hive connector, you may want to expose how many files were read or how many IOs were done against S3 or HDFS. So that will be possible once this feature goes in. So this is, again, just a sampling of the projects that are going on. There's a lot more. This is dynamic. It depends on what people are actually actively working on or interested in working on. So if there are areas where you want to see improvements, like by all means, like talk to people in Slack, volunteer to help drive those. Like all that is welcome. Right, and I think Brian covered a lot of this stuff, so I'm not gonna go too deeply. One thing that I think wasn't mentioned, if you want to get into developing or contributing to the code base, there's a tag on GitHub called Good First Issue. We try to tag things that are tasks that are like we consider like entry-level tasks, so they can get you familiarized with the code base, with the development processes. So these are good candidates if you're just getting involved. So please go and look at that. If you want to write blog posts, We have a community blog. It's open to anyone to contribute entries. So please do that. And of course, if you have your own blog, write about Trino. Like any help promoting the name, promoting the capabilities is good for the project and good for anyone that is considering or looking at Trino as an option. And then, of course, we've already talked about this. Manfred covered the book. Here's a link where you can eventually be able to find a link to download the new version of the book. There's the community broadcast that Brian talked about, and of course the weblog. You can go and see there's a bunch of very interesting content there. And with that, I'm going to open it up for questions.
All right, thanks, Martin, and also if you want to pull off the sharing the screen, and we can bring Dane, David, and Eric up as well. Let's do. We're going to kind of open this up as a slightly more ask me anything kind of forum. So let's see if anybody. Let's see. So I had a couple questions that were brought up during the talks, and we answered some of them, but I wanted to also bring them up to kind of bring them out on the recording as well. So one question that was asked was, some of the update statements are not supported for external tables in the Hive connector. Is there any plan to support that in the Hive connector moving forward?
So I see there was a clarification about the question for external tables.
Yeah.
So update in Hive or like row level delete or the upcoming merge statement, those only work for the ACID format because normal Hive tables are not updatable. Like files are immutable. There's no way to go and change an individual row. What Hive ACID did was basically added a layer on top. That's a combination of like extra files on disk that keep track of row level information and changes in the metastore to be able to manage them. And so for normal Hive tables, there's no way to just go and say, update some random row in a random file and like have it work. That's just a limitation of how the Hive like data model and file format works. But for Iceberg, you won't be able to do that because Iceberg supports row level updates and deletes in the V2 specification.
Okay, thanks, David. Another question that was asked earlier on was like talking close to like fault tolerance. So is having fault tolerance for long running queries still on the roadmap? It's kind of, they're saying it's painful without the fault tolerance, and using Trino for machine learning workloads and single data access layer for different user personas like data scientists. So is that something we're looking into doing? Why or why not do we kind of like support fault tolerance today? If anybody wants to jump into that one.
Oh, let me, I can take a stab at that. So generally, fault tolerance hasn't been much of a problem. Of course, like it's still in the long-term vision of the project, but in terms of priorities, like it depends on what actually people are seeing in practice. Like, and it hasn't historically hasn't been much of a problem. Long-running queries like tend to be when you have long-running queries, you have to ask the question of why are they taking long? And sometimes it's just a matter of optimizing them. Sometimes there's misconfiguration. Typically, like if you have a reasonably performant cluster, you shouldn't have long-running queries. Trino is pretty fast. So in the question that was asked, like one of the I guess maybe you can clarify. Are you talking about clients talking to Trino to fetch data and then do some processing? And if that's the case, then that could be a problem with, for example, the client being too slow to read data, and then that causes the query to take long. So there are other strategies around that. For example, you can run your queries, write your data to some table in S3, and then go and read the files directly from external systems. so you avoid keeping the query state for too long in the Trino cluster, and therefore you're not affected by potential nodes dying over time. There are other things that we talked about around that, like for example, being able to have clients that can read data in parallel from Trino, so you can speed up the reading process, and therefore like reduce the latency of the query and reduce the exposure. So again, like there's no, like it is part of the long-term roadmap. It's a tricky problem because fault tolerance also implies you have to store state somewhere. That causes there are easy or naive ways to do it. There are more complex ways to do it, but most of them involve doing some kind of I/O. So there's a trade-off there. Like fault tolerance means your queries are going to be slower. So it's not clear that that's an advantage at this point.
Awesome. Someone brought up this software, and I don't know if anybody knows here. Is anybody familiar with Okera by chance on the panel? It's a data governance. I'll just say it's like a data governance and data authorization. Seems like a platform. And so I will actually kind of go ahead and answer this one, is asking if there's any integration with Okera. And I'm assuming if none of us are aware of it, then there's no integration. So I guess maybe that could open up a different thing, a different question of like, do we have any kind of integration with any of these types of platforms that do data governance?
I know that just recently, or we are in the process of launching an integration with Apache Atlas for Starburst Enterprise. So that's the closest thing I'm aware of. And then there's also the question of like that came up actually as a separate question about integrating Ranger. I know that we have Starburst integration with Ranger, but there's also open source usage with Ranger. And the question is actually that you have to create policies for each level, catalog, schema, and table. And the user is saying that this is counterintuitive. As far as I know, that's not really necessary. Like Ranger policies can use patterns and stuff like that. So you don't have to go at each level, from what I understand.
So I've heard of Okera just in conversations inside of Starburst. I know there's been some conversations about whether or not we're going to integrate with it. As the Starburst company, we kind of track all these different things and then figure out which ones we want to integrate with. In terms of the open source, like it would take someone that would want to do an integration. They'd want to do it enough that they're willing to put in the large amounts of work for it. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think we're doing an integration, but I don't actually know for sure.
No, so for Okera, there's nothing in Trino open source project, but Starburst has a partnership with Okera. I can drop the link about the announcement, but there will be integration going on in the future.
See, shows you how much I know.
Yeah, I dropped the announcement there, so you can read about it.
Nice. And Vishal, I just post that same link too as well. But good. Let's see. There was let me see. I just had my question thing up here and it just fell down. Okay. Can we? Yeah. This was also answered. Just figured I would put this on the on the recording. So official connector around Metabase. Any progress there that any of you are aware of? I know. So
just to clarify, Metabase is a client tool. So and there is support. You can use it with the old Presto DB support, but it is kind of creaky. And uses the HTTP API directly, like the sort of REST API we have. I opened a PR that changes it to be a equivalent one for Trino that has the right HTTP headers for Trino, but that A, that hasn't been merged, and B, that's probably not the right approach anyway. Ideally, they should switch over to use the JDBC driver directly rather than the REST API. Metabase is written in Clojure. and I'm not a Clojure guy, so that's one of the things that is a bit of an obstacle. But I'm planning to look into this a little bit more. But if anyone in the community is interested to chip in on that, please help us out on Slack. There might be other connections that are implemented that are using a JDBC driver. So if you can sort of lift and shift that over, that would be the cleanest approach. I just have to look into it more.
Cool. All right. We have a question that's saying, can you, let me see, what's the best learning resource to get best practices around query optimization? I think that's maybe referring back. I'll leave this to the team here.
There are a couple of trainings we did last year that talk about that. There's one where we talked about how to optimize and configure and how to configure and optimize Trino deployments for performance. And there was one where we talked about the main high level practices around query. We talked about the query plans and what to look for and how to diagnose performance problems at that level and so on. If
you're looking for a link to those, they're all in our Trino YouTube channel, and they have timestamp for all the different topics there, and they're also linked from the Trino community broadcast meeting notes. So you should be able to find them pretty easily. And then the other tip I have is there's a bunch of it also in the book. And then these questions around kind of query optimization come up on Slack all the time. And it really depends a lot on the query you are looking at, the connector you're looking at, and the underlying data and complexity of what you're even trying to do. So if you're really struggling, just jump in on the community and we'll hopefully be able to help you, or at least guide you more in the right direction specific to your problem.
And I just shared the link to that playlist with all of the trainings. In particular, the one that Martin was referring to there was the second video talking about the CBO optimization. So it's understanding and tuning Presto query processing. Does anybody have any further questions? Oh, we just got one. Let me see. Well, Manfred, this one's aimed at you. You said the OSS version of Ranger works with a single policy. It'd be really helpful if you would share some examples, maybe over Slack or else. Okay, so that might be more of an offline question. Yeah.
Just ping on Slack. It's not a single policy, but I think it supports like placeholders, asterisks, and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Any last minute questions? And I'm also, we're totally open to other questions like origin stories, questions about, where things are going with the roadmap in particular, maybe not just specific features, but like, I don't know, any other initiatives that anybody's curious about. We'll leave that open for like another minute or so. And then if we're not getting anything, we can wrap it up. So I think for the most part, any plans to expose an online Trino instance on the web to help newbies get started? That's a good question. So I don't know. I'll let you maybe take it, Manfred. But
yeah, sure. So there's a couple of aspects to that. As Vishal mentioned earlier, there's a free instance of like free trials for Starburst Galaxy will be available. So that's kind of a way to test things. But for the writing day in Portland that we're doing on Sunday, we also recorded 2 videos. One of them is how to basically just start up Trino with Docker in a single one-liner command and then the CLI in it. And that's a super easy way to get started because literally it's a one-liner that starts up the Docker command, that starts up the container, then the second one starts the CLI, and that already has the TPCH/TPCDS connectors configured, which then allows you to do all the query testing that you want with those data sources. There's data in there, and you can learn all the SQL functions, all the SQL statements, experiment with new functions like whatever match range and like match recognizer, whatever's coming. The Windows stuff is already there. Timestamp testing, all of that is available right there. I would recommend that. And then obviously, if you need to get to testing with real data sources, you need to deploy something. And then you have multiple options there with like, TouchSet, RPM, Docker.
I'll also put in one thing. I'm starting to work on a Trino getting started repository that I'm hoping to eventually get to a community level thing that eventually gets different people pushing in to this repository, and it'll basically contain a set of kind of sandbox Docker setups. We'll have all the configurations done already, and be kind of it'll also contain like readmes and stuff that will bring you through with tutorials and stuff. So slowly trying to build that up. It's very much under construction and things like that. But if you have ideas, and if you also kind of put together your own little sandbox environments, or want to add your own, definitely feel free to like add a pull request there, and hopefully slowly we can make this into more of a a community driven type thing, as well as something that I'll be continuing to add on our getting started page and things like that.
There's a question from Akash also. He's asking about Tableau using the PrestaSQL references and stuff like that. So that's good mention there. We just published the integration of Starburst Enterprise and also Trino on the extensions gallery for Tableau. So if you are firing up Tableau, go to the extensions gallery. The Tableau driver for Starburst Enterprise is right there, and it does work for Trino. And it's using they call it a TACO file or Tableau connector file. And that does improve it. And it uses the JDBC driver under the hood. So the old installation pains are much relieved, and it's much better. And yeah, it works pretty nicely now. Cool. So use that for Trino.
So I have another one asking for experiences with Trino on streaming data, Kafka and Spark. I think this is like something. Any of the panelists want to jump on that? And it's not really a question. It's kind of, I think, just asking for, are there, what's possible, I guess, in terms of, querying streaming data through Trino? Well, I'll change it to that kind of question.
Has anyone here actually tried out the Kafka connector? I mean, I hacked on the code a little bit. Martin, Manfred?
I haven't used it myself, but it's used in production by many companies. I think the question there is, like, when people talk about querying over streaming data, are you talking about like having a long-standing query over a stream of data, or being able to query a streaming data source like Kafka, which Trino can do? I mean, you can treat a Kafka stream as a table. You can query the current state of that stream and then get results. If you're talking about long-standing queries, then Trino right now is not the right tool for that, because like we said, like if you have a long-running query and something one of the workers fails, then your query is gonna cancel, it's gonna stop. So also, the language doesn't have the right semantics for some of the things you might want to be doing. For example, with streaming data, you may want to query and do real-time based windows where you want a value to be output every hour that you're querying for in real time. So there are better tools for that right now. I mean, you have Flink is one of those. You have actually Kafka has a query language for that type of processing.
Confluent has one like custom built for Kafka. I forget what it's called.
KSQL.
That's it.
All right.
But generally, I think if you're not talking about the direct usage of Trino into Spark and Kafka, the overall, like we talked in the Trino community broadcast with the Iceberg people and others, it keeps coming up all the time that people use Spark, they use Kafka, they use Flink, and they massage data, and then it ends up somewhere in some storage in Iceberg or whatever, and Trino is always the one that is used for querying. So that might not be the direct usage, but in a sort of larger data platform in an organization, it's very common to see all of them.
Cool. One quick question I had, and I have another one right after this, but I have this for going towards Eric, since he hasn't been picked on much during this session. Eric, so Eric was by the way gone from the Presto scene for a while, and then came back right around the time that we were rebranding as Trino. So I just want to bug Eric and say, hey, you know, like what have you been up to since you've been back in the club?
Well, mostly I've been trying to get caught back up on what's been going on because, man, this project moves so quickly.
Yeah,
I've had a hiatus for like 2 years, and it's like I come back and I look and it's like pretty much everything I know has changed. So
yeah.
you'll see me like kind of crawling around the Slack channels and on GitHub. I'm just trying to help out wherever I can and getting caught up on the latest stuff.
I saw your
most
proposition.
recent-
I saw your proposition on like how to change up memory configuration.
Oh yeah, I mean, just looking at the channel, you can see a bunch of people talking about how annoying it is to configure the memory, and so that's something that I think we're looking into. I'm actually looking into that to see if we can make it better for the initial bootstrap. We think that there's a number of ways where we could just change some of the defaults and change how the system detects some of the sizes of the environment so that we can just configure things more automatically out of the gate. I think that'll make things a lot simpler and nicer for everyone going forward, because if you've tried to set it up, you know just how finicky that can be.
Totally.
And just for fun, I did end up working on some of the top end road number and rank implementations, just as a fun little project. And so
cool.
I was able to make that a little bit faster. If you use that and you have any issues, let me know.
Cool. There you go. That's a direct line to Eric now to ask him about the functionality for top. Awesome. Another question that's come out is, what is the possibilities or limitations when querying Hootie tables using Trino? Maybe that's one could be for David, or does anybody
I think it just works, and the only limitation is that it doesn't support the merge on write on read tables from Hootie right now. But other than that, I think it just works.
Okay. And merge on read, that's so that this is a different kind of way that Hootie handles this compared to like how Iceberg handles, like they do merge on write, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think they keep some kind of Delta files, and of course, when you're reading, you have to consider them. And currently, implementation doesn't do that.
Okay.
Iceberg's having similar features. So I know they're doing an integration with, is it Flink, David?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Flink has that similar feature where during the time window, you can update a row that was just sent in. So you can deal with like either duplicates or bad data or things like that. So can't say anything. I don't know much more about Hootie. It isn't super popular. We rarely get questions about it, so I don't really know much more.
Yeah, I'd say like we're really excited about Iceberg.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we're not like, there's lots of competing formats, but like the one that if you ask us like which one to use, we're going to tell you Iceberg, because like Iceberg is like extremely well designed, very strong community, lots of people using it. It's got a full specification, like lots of great features. Like, I don't know, like we love Iceberg.
And it's a community focused on the data format spec. It isn't like we're in like Hive. The Hive spec, which doesn't exist, is like a side job for the Hive community. In the Iceberg community, that is their full project, is just doing the spec and making sure the data formats are great, which is a nice change of pace to not have to like reverse engineer a data spec.
Another question, is it advisable to use Trino for data ingestion pipelines, even though it doesn't support fault tolerance?
So I'll just jump in. At Facebook, it was what, half of when we left, Martin?
Yeah, at the end of 2018, we were running half of all the workloads for all the ETL pipelines at Facebook using Presto. So it is definitely usable for that. The thing is, in some cases, like Trino is so much faster than Hive, for instance, that even if something fails in the middle, you can retry the query a few times and still be under the time it would take to complete the query in Hive. So it tends not to be a problem.
The fault tolerance stuff I kind of put in the category of FUD. So people think that Trino, because we can compute over data that was stored by Hive, is that we are like Hive and we are like Spark. We are more like a BigQuery or a Redshift or a Snowflake or an MPP database. And if you know anything about those systems, they don't have the sort of fault tolerance rules that you have in Hive. The reason Hive and Spark have these rules is because they're so unbelievably slow, where queries might take days, that you need the ability to restart partial bits of them just to do like system upgrades and things like that. A query in Trino that's taking more than a couple of hours is probably there's something going on with it. Like at Facebook, we basically would look at any batch query that was taking longer than 4 hours because there was clearly a problem with it. And so that's one thing. The other thing is that everyone is making this assumption that Hive and Spark queries don't fail, and they fail all the time. So at Facebook, the wasted CPU, so the number one calculation we would do in the warehouse is how much work did we do on a job that ultimately failed? And so in Hive, the wasted CPU number was on the order of 10%. So we would 10% of all CPU time spent on jobs ultimately failed. And the entire queries would fail, which is why like everyone uses a system like Airflow, which was based on, written by former Facebook people based on an internal Facebook thing, that will retry your batch jobs. And so with that plus Trino, you can bring down your batch processing. We were able to bring it down by, to like 25% or less, depending on the job. But I think the average worked out at Facebook about 25%, which is a ginormous cost savings. And by the way, the wasted CPU number for Trino was less than 1%. So even though there wasn't fault tolerance, we were burning way less wasted CPU just because it's faster. It's, if your jobs are faster and they ultimately fail, you're burning way less CPU than if your job spent, a day doing compute on hundreds of machines and then ultimately fails, which Hive really actually does fail kind of all the time. Like I think that the FUD around fault tolerance is actually stopping people from taking advantage of the huge cost savings they could realize today.
Yeah, one thing that is worth noting is that in a well-tuned setup, nodes actually don't fail. We at Facebook we used to run clusters of say 800 machines or more, and nodes didn't die. I mean, if like machines dying because of hardware problems didn't actually happen very often, like maybe every couple months or so. So that's a very, very small exposure in terms of the number of queries that would be affected. Of course, like a node can die because of a bug, but then that's a bug. I mean, that's something that we would track down and fix, and then over time, we end up getting rid of all the obvious bugs, and of course, there's the more esoteric bugs that you eventually run into, but those are just things that will get fixed at some point.
The most common sources of failures were outages in like the Metastore system or outages in the storage system, or other things that you need to deal with to run a query, and those have nothing to do with the query engine and result in ultimate failures in any of these systems. So that's where it's like the failures that we saw were pretty low. Mostly because they were driven by external systems whenever we saw a failure.
Okay, awesome. Well, I think I haven't seen any new questions coming in, and we're pretty much at the top of our time. And so I want to thank everybody that's still here. And a couple people are now trickling out. Thank you very much for attending. Hope that you all sign up to get some shirts and the new Trino book. Yeah. That's right. Show off that swag, Dane. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you guys next month when we talk with Ryan and get a little more in depth with that iceberg use case. All right. Thank you all.